Is the European Central Bank going to be adding XRP and other crypto assets to their balance sheets in the future? We have seen time and time again where Christine Lagarde gets up on the stage and says they are not interested in Bitcoin. So what are they interested in? I want to explore that in this video. We're also going to take a look at like what's happening with the market and Bitcoin. We're having a big shift here. There's some new XRP products that are coming. We have ISO around the corner, and there's so many other things happening that I want to cover. Let's just jump right into this. I probably said cover too many times, but that's what it is. It's a Tuesday. Let's get into it.
This matter that you referred to, and whether reserves of central bank should or could include bitcoins, I think there is a view around the table of the governing council, and most likely the general council as well, that reserves have to be liquid, that reserves have to be secure, that they have to be safe, that they should not be plagued by the suspicion of money laundering or other criminal activities.
There you go.
And as a result, I'm confident that reserves will not enter, that bitcoins will not enter the reserves of any of the central banks of the General Council. I had a good conversation with my colleague from the Czech Republic, and I leave it to him to make whatever announcement he wants to make, but I'm confident that he's convinced, as we all are, of the necessity to have liquid, secure, and safe reserves.
Okay, so the issue here has been Bitcoin was previously used and still could be used for some illicit activity. And I know you're thinking, Sensei, the dollars, I get it, right? But when you look around the crypto industry, Bitcoin was the first. And so it was used for all kinds of funny business. And that stain on Bitcoin is still there, right? Even though institutions and people are adopting and this and that, there's really nothing that the ECB wants to do anywhere close to touching Bitcoin in their reserves. So what are they going to do? Because we know we're heading to this digital future. We know that central banks are looking to expand their balance sheets to cover some of this. We've heard President Trump say that he would like to pay off some of the debt with assets like Bitcoin and other crypto assets. So what are they going to do here? Let's just jump into it. Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, has been explicit that neither she nor the ECB sees Bitcoin as appropriate for central bank balance sheets, repeatedly citing its volatility, lack of intrinsic value, and regulatory uncertainty as reasons for this position. Instead, her attention has largely been focused on the foundational role of the digital euro and central bank digital currencies. And so you start to hear central bank digital currencies, and the biggest company in the world that has the most pilots for any company is, of course, Ripple, right? They have 24. We've only heard about 6 or 7. And so you start to wonder what's going on behind it. Like, when are we going to find out about the other 15 or 18 CBDC tests that they have done? That is what I'm waiting for. And so, of course, talks about digital euro. And so the ECB's attitude towards Bitcoin and stablecoins, Lagarde said Bitcoin lacks the underlying value. We talked about that, cannot be digital gold. So when a lot of people say Bitcoin is digital gold, she's like, digital gold is digital gold. It's not Bitcoin. And so digital assets of interest are XRP and XLM. Unlike Bitcoin, digital assets such as XRP and XLM have surfaced as candidates to meet the ECB's requirements for institutional and reserve usage. So there are requirements that the ECB put out and says this would qualify, this is what doesn't qualify. And what qualifies is XRP and XLM. All right. Thanks to their regulatory compliance, operational reliability, and established partnerships. So it makes a difference. Michael Saylor goes out and tells everyone to buy Bitcoin. Why? Because he wants to get rich. He wants to be right. Ripple doesn't go out and tell anybody to buy XRP, but they go out and say we're building all of our products and XRP is at the core of our business. Hell, Ripple has even bought XRP off the open market to fund some of their ODL. So we understand that XRP is one of the rare assets that has this whole compliance, KYC, AML, spot check, all of these things built into it, right? Decentralized ID. Lagarde herself has not officially endorsed XRP, but under her leadership, the ECB has explored distributed ledger technology and conducted sandbox trials involving the XRP ledger. It's, that she wouldn't have allowed it in the front door if she didn't have, some justification for doing so. They're actually testing it through Axiology right now. It's part of the ECB's test for their digital euro. We'll see if it, is one of the main technologies used here. XRP, particularly after its legal clarity in the US as a non-security, is seen in aligning with central bank priorities for speed, cost, and compliance in international settlement. All right, let's figure out like what's going on with crypto here. You know, the markets are down. People are panicking. I've seen a lot of people on X saying that they're leaving the market for good. And I say, you know, if you cannot handle the ups and downs of crypto, if you cannot have this view of 3, 5, 10 years from now, maybe the crypto space isn't for you, right? I make it a point not to look at XRP's price every day because I know I get emotional. When it's up, I'm like, yeah, let's go. I'm rocking. I'm feeling good. And when it's down, I'm like, oh man, not again. So listen, take a breath, take a step back, and have the understanding that this is going to be a longer term play. Adoption takes time. Regulation and updating these jurisdictions and rules takes time. Let's get into this clip from Matt Hulong.
It's really, it's a generational opportunity, and to get in at these prices.
How much of a long-term buy do you think this is?
I think it's a generational opportunity for long-term investors, whether you're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. To double down on what Tom said about Ethereum specifically, look, I think investors are very nervous broadly about the economy, about AI valuations, about tariffs, about the broad economy. You want to look for secular trends that are decoupled from that. I think regardless of what happens on the economy in the next year, stable coins will grow tremendously. I think regardless of what happens, tokenization will, maybe 10x in the next few years. Prediction markets are going to be huge. Decentralized identity and digital identity are going to be huge. Ethereum lets you play those secular trends, which are in this enormous growth phase, almost regardless of what's happening in the broader economy. So for me, it's really, it's a generational opportunity. And to get in at these prices, I think really is almost a gift for long-term investors. It's a tremendous opportunity.
All right. Tremendous opportunity. He loves to not mention XRP, but that's who he is. So all good. But, you're mentioning Ethereum, you're mentioning Solana. Why not mention the third largest token in the world, right? Cool, Matt. All right, and then here you go. 1.7 trillion Citibank says liquidity squeeze for Bitcoin is ending. So this huge drop in price for Bitcoin should be slowing down, and the price should be coming back up is what they're saying here. Let's just play the clip and you can hear it directly yourself.
In your note, Dirk, correct me if I have this wrong. We're trying to find explanations for what's going on with Bitcoin. Were you pinning that on tightening liquidity?
That is one of the explanations. There are a couple of things going on in Bitcoin that are interesting. First, there was a flash crash in early October. And that, for Bitcoin itself, it was a 14% move down over 2 days. Maybe not that drastic, but some of the altcoins really got sold much, much harder. And after this flash crash, we saw that the flows into the Bitcoin ETFs and so forth really changed. So the flows really never recovered, and so retail was apparently somewhat shell-shocked by that day, and we saw outflows. The other thing that happened is that I think a lot of the institutional investors trade Bitcoin with a bit of a trend-following mindset. And so we broke some of the moving averages that they tend to look at, and that is also reducing the source of demand. But the third point is what you were mentioning, and that is that the liquidity which we measure by bank reserves on the Fed balance sheet dropped by a bit more than 500 billion. And that happened because the Treasury increased the Treasury general account at the Fed by selling a lot of T-bills. And there were two reasons for that. One is why this TGA account was so high. One is that during the government shutdown, the Treasury didn't spend as much, so that account rose mechanically on the back of that. But secondly, they did sell more T-bills than is typical. And so we are thinking going forward, the liquidity squeeze, so that explanation for the Bitcoin weakness should actually get much better, because we expect TGA to at the very least flatten out and probably decline, meaning bank reserves and liquidity should improve between now and the end, partly because of the reopening and partly because the Treasury sold so many T-bills already.
All right, remember, right now, the US is going to be ending quantitative tightening, right? And they're going to be doing quantitative easing. That's when the government prints money. So what you're going to see here is a lot of value, right? A lot of money supply re-entering the space. There's going to be a lot of investment into, I don't want to say riskier assets, but like maybe I'm missing the term. It is a little bit early today as I'm recording. I do apologize. But like you're going to see stocks, you're going to see crypto, gold, these types of things. I think you're going to see them starting to go up. You're having the Japanese print 110 billion. You're having a lot of central banks right now print. Usually when you see that happening, markets react towards the upward. And remember, eventually you're going to have higher inflation. We're going to have to deal with that in 2024. 2026. What does that look like? We're going to go through it together. But I do think crypto, Bitcoin, and the rest of the assets will start heading back up after this, kind of small panic that we are seeing in the market. Remember, people do go on vacation during Thanksgiving time here in the US and during Christmas. And so markets might not be as hot during those specific times, but we are entering a new phase when you're getting regulation, you're getting institutional adoption, you're getting ETFs. We're really at a point of a market that we quite haven't seen before, right? When you mix in regulation and jurisdictions and countries all competing with each other to be the crypto hubs of the world, that gets exciting, right? That puts a future for the digital asset space that we love so much. And I think it can only go up from here. All right. Staggered release. It looks like Easy XRP, the Franklin Templeton's XRP, is scheduled to begin trading on November 18th. I thought this maybe was going to get pushed. Yeah, to the 24th. XRP is Easy XRP on Cboe only, likely 1124 on NASDAQ. So it's going to launch maybe on one institution over the week. Cboe is a much smaller one. And then the NASDAQ obviously is the much bigger one. So I'll bring you all the updated numbers as we go through it. I did want to play this here. This is the CEO of Robinhood, Vlad Tenev, He says real world asset tokenizations is an unstoppable freight train, right? Where have we heard this terminology before? Rosie Rios and a few other people, right? The train has left the station. Now this is an unstoppable freight train. So we like trains. I don't know what the analogy is here, but we really love to talk about trains. Here it is.
Tokenization of private companies is still quite early. So what we demonstrated in Europe is that the technology works, and we did it in the form of a giveaway to customers. But what hasn't been unlocked yet is real-time 24/7 trading. And I think there's a lot of things that we still have to figure out, not just with regulators, but also with these companies, because they rightly do have some concerns. It's a new thing. Not all of them like their stocks being traded in real time 24/7.
That's interesting.
I think that we're going to get to a point, I think, in the next probably 5 to 10 years where it is ubiquitous. I mentioned in my talk that tokenization is a freight train. It can't be stopped. And I think eventually it'll eat the whole global financial system. But it's going to take time for everyone to be comfortable with it. So that's why
he's saying 5 to 10 years here for companies to get comfortable with this, for tokenization to really play out. I know there's some people in this space that say like this is happening before the end of the year. Me personally, you can't do any of this stuff without regulation. Once you pass regulation in the US, you have to do all the rulemaking with the SEC and the CFTC, and that could take years on itself. The Dodd-Frank Act was passed after the financial crisis and took over 3 years to be enacted after it was passed. So there's a lot of speculation, people saying that this is going to explode in the next few months. And then there's the longer time frame where here's the CEO of Robinhood saying this is going to play out over the next 5 to 10 years, the next decade.
We're pursuing multiple angles. We did want to be the first to tokenize OpenAI and SpaceX, and I don't know if there will be a Guinness Book of World Records for that one, but there should be. But what we're doing now is we're working very closely with companies and making.
My man's calling for a Guinness World Record, right? That's what he wanted when he was a kid. He's like, how am I going to get in the Guinness Book World Records? And then as he's an adult, we're going to be the first to tokenize SpaceX stock. Okay. All right, my man.
Ensure that they welcome the tokenization. They see real benefits for themselves and their customers. And we're also giving exposure to private companies through other means of the U.S. as well. For example, Robinhood Ventures, which we announced about a week ago. So
Smart.
Robinhood's definitely going to be a leader in private markets. The exact mechanics might be different in the future than they are today, but I think what's clear is customers want it. It's going to be a big market, and I think we'll be at the front.
I remember Robinhood bought Bitstamp, so they have some of that XRP ledger, XRP, blockchain capabilities and infrastructure. That was what I was looking for. Okay, digital perspectives. Here you are, November 22nd, 2025. 8 days left for the migration to ISO 20022. A large share of banks have already made this move, and you're already seeing millions of payments per day using the new ISO standards. I don't think this is going to be a November 22nd. It's going to full send XRP's price. I've said this actually for the last few years. I think this is just another day. Obviously, if banks don't upgrade to this new standard, they're going to be fined into 2026 and they will stop working. So if banks don't upgrade, their infrastructure to support this new technology standard, they won't allow it to be banks at that point. So I do think it's really interesting. This does benefit companies like Ripple because now everybody is moving onto the same messaging standard that RippleNet lives on. And of course, Ripple was a part of the ISO 20022 body to help set up these standards. So you start to wonder, what is the bigger plan at play here and what will that global shift look like? Ripple's bank charter, we have passed that 120-day period where we should get some answers soon. There has been an enormous pushback from the CBA and the NBA, the National Bankers Association, to plead to the OCC not to issue these bank charters. So all of these legacy banks are trying to do everything they can from stopping the fintechs from becoming banks. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the OCC does here. Obviously, if the OCC blocks Ripple, that could become a bigger issue here. The Trump administration has said how pro-crypto friendly that they are. And if they were to stop Ripple and Circles and whoever else from getting this bank charter, that would cause some friction in the system. And I don't think they're looking to make waves. And so I think this is just I think this is them trying to do something. But I think at the end of the day, Ripple's going to get that banking license, and we'll see how that's going to affect XRP and, of course, Ripple's banking legitimacy out into the world. All right, Hyperliquid whale alert. $95 million XRP long was just opened. People love to do crazy stuff. To see a $95 million long, someone just put 44,317,000 XRP in their long. Crazy stuff. And then, of course, Chad said the third day, 5 million XRP estimate for Canary XRPC comes in close with 4.4 million XRP acquired from the bank to fund. And so now over 124.4 million has been taken under management. So an enormous amount of XRP is starting to disappear off exchanges and, of course, go into these funds. I'm going to have a complete updated video. So the same day you see this video, go look for my updated video on Canary and everything that's happening around the spot XRP ETF. We got some new numbers that you have to see. All right, guys, I'm going to end it there. We got through a lot of information here on this video. Thank you so much for watching and being here. I really appreciate you. Sorry that, it is a little early for me. I've had a little bit of a headache, so I'm trying to get through it, but I love you. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. Peace.